Good day. My name is David Furey, and I'm the son of best-selling Newfoundland author Hubert Furey. I'm here today to read to you an excerpt from his best-selling book, As the Old Folks Would Say. The piece I'm going to read for you today is called Tomorrow the Giller. It's a tongue-in-cheek look at the difficulties facing a novice novelist as they attempt to practice their craft, and the many competing pieces of advice they get, often from guidebooks. Tomorrow the Giller. "What are you writing now?" asked my wife as she squinted over my shoulder. "A novel," I replied, with absolute confidence. "A novel? I thought you were writing a short story." She was furrowing her brows, not sure if she had heard me correctly. I knew she was doing all of this behind me, because I had seen her do it before in that exact same tone of voice. She always squints first, furrows after. "Yes, short stories lack the depth of the profound life experience." It says so right here, in the Central Avalon Peninsula Author's Guide for Beginning Writers. Profound life experience. My wife sounded skeptical. "Yes, a short story can never fully express my profound life experience. I was a teacher all those years. Then there was that time I went to St. Pierre." "You started a novel 8 years ago." It was definitely a mild reprimand. My wife didn't like things dragged out. "Yes, this is another one. I'm going to write both of them concurrently. The guide says it can sometimes be the best way to overcome writer's block. If you're having trouble with the first novel, begin a second one." My wife was pursing her lips with her fingers. "If you can't write one, write two? Isn't that... It might be. But I'm inclined to agree with him. Besides, maybe I can write them so they follow one another, like a trilogy." My wife was looking at me as if she didn't understand, her eyes narrowing even more than she had previously furrowed. "A trilogy has 3 books. Yes, I know that. I'll write these 2 concurrently, and the third will naturally arise from the intense flow of creativity to which I have subjected myself for writing the first 2. "But you only wrote 2 chapters of that first novel, The Train and the Boat. You didn't even finish the 3rd chapter, The Kitchen." "Yes, those were the symbolic representations of Newfoundland outport life. But you had the awfulest time with those." "What do you mean?" It was my turn to furrow. I never squinted, although sometimes I looked piercingly. "Well, you only ever had 2 characters, and they were ever so long in one place. For the longest time you couldn't get them off the boat, and they're still in the kitchen. An absolutely disciplined approach. You remember Lawrence Jarrell. They all sat around the table in Cairo through 4 books. He only had 4 characters. Cleo..." "I know them," she interrupted. Of course she did. My wife has read more novels than I could ever write in a year. "But he was a distinguished European writer, like Joseph Conrad. I stopped her, showing mild displeasure in return. "Joseph Conrad had to write in a foreign language." "You could write in Polish?" My wife was shaking her head in amazement. She always expressed amazement at my wide-ranging knowledge of literature. "Of course, if I sailed around on Polish ships for a while." Now she was shaking her head in absolute disbelief. "You should finish your first novel before you do anything else." That's what she would do. Every author has a different approach. The Central Avalon Peninsula Author's Guide for Beginning Writers was very clear on that. Besides, I can't think of anything more symbolic than more symbolic representations of Newfoundland life. I sat musingly. What about the wharf? I could have sworn the tone was acerbic, but I interpreted it as helpful. I thought a moment before I replied. "No, the wharf would never work. The heroine has high-heel shoes on. Spike heels. They'd get caught up in the spaces between the planks. She would trip, get hurt. I don't know how to write about hospitals. The guide said a beginner writer had to be authentic. Besides, they'd be standing there too long for a whole chapter. And we're getting into late fall, winter. And they'd have to change clothes. I'd have to rewrite paragraphs. I'd have to maintain consistency. That's what the guide says." That got her. Imagine using the wharf for a symbolic representation of Newfoundland life. My wife straightened, and the lines of her face tautened. Her voice had taken on an unusually dry tone. Maybe they wouldn't have to talk at all. Maybe she could just stand there and have her coat furl around her aching legs while he tried to haul her out from between the planks. I should have picked up on the tone more quickly, but I was becoming excited, my inspiration triggered by my wife's metaphorical language. Burst upon burst of creative energy flooded through my brain, unleashing images like the thick rolling of the sea. The image tumbled one over the other like potheads roiling in shallow water by a deserted beach. Excellent, I shouted. A beautiful metaphor. Furl. Just like a sail. A nautical reference. You're absolutely right. I should go back to my first novel. Splendid. Her thin coat furling around her aching legs, while squid-shaped forms danced on the harbour stillness. That's it. Authenticity. Keep it Newfoundland. Precise detail. That's what the guide says. Or should I say, her squid-shaped coat. Swirling sail-like. I have to be precise. Let's see. Sail-like? Sail-like? The door was closing quietly. I was alone with my genius, my inspiration. Every Central Avalon beginner writer should have such an encouraging and knowing wife to help him past his first beginner writer's block, to help him recognize the infinite limits of his bursting imagination. I was typing furiously. She stood on the wharf, a slippery wharf, a wharf of many planks, with spaces in between, with one plank missing, probably stolen. Her loose-fitting arcade-purchased coat furling and wreathing about her taut and aching legs. The anguished squirting of many squids, the only sound to disturb the ethereal silence of an excitingly demure August afternoon. Perfect. Now what will I have him say first? I know, just a hint of sexual overture. Astrophilia, my dear. You look so beautiful, standing on a planked wharf, your coat so sail-like, furling and reefing. Thank you. That was Tomorrow the Giller from As the Old Folks Would Say. Have a great day.